Audio check 1, 2. it only allows me in so I've got to be logged in.
You made a call or something?
Hi, Mr. Linares, how are you? Want me to log in?
No, it's.
Let's get it further.
Oh,
Hey, James.
it's been a while. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Hi. Hi, how are you?
I'm Shelley Burns. I'm general counsel, but feel free to take a seat. You know, I think your presentation is
It looks like it's. Yeah.
but I don't know before scheduling, and so, but there's only 3 orders on. So if you want to go ahead and take a seat wherever you feel comfortable in the room.
Yeah, I'm willing to just meet you. Good to see you. James, how's it going? Good.
You're willing to just what, stand
Stand
outside?
outside if I need to. It gets busy.
No, please. Hi. Feel free to sit, and then we'll have the presentation available. It'll be pulled up.
That's something you all can pull up.
Right, so, hey Kim, on the presentation, will we give them the keyboard and the laser pointer, or will we just say?
Ooh, oh,
So
very cushy.
Brian and Kim will tell you the access you have to be able to run your presentation. So whenever you guys get that straight, if you let them know.
You can.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Hey, James, got lights on fire. Oh, hey, gosh, it's been a while. How are you? Good. I drove all this way to hear you guys. I was gonna say, that's all.
It was just a pleasant surprise.
Oh. Only to see me.
Of course, you know that.
Oh, there's all sorts of pleasant surprises here when you come to the agenda. How's everything been? Yeah. Well, I haven't looked at a gas yet. We haven't really been doing the low income energy efficiency stuff for that.
Grinding through some before their shift.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, that's right.
We have 3 new bosses.
Just 3?
But it's good because then we're just restarting the basic.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
So your rainbows and deals. It's good.
You kind of let the legislative session. You know, we're having big stuff going. What do you have? Oh, did you test yours? Yeah. What's going on there right now? Are they talking about the budget?
Sure. Yeah. So it's I think it's
That'll be fun.
more or less. Session is like the guys.
Sounds like a compromise was reached on the budget where Oh, it really? Yeah. Oh, well, once they do IT reform, it'll be over with that. That was like some previous question on that, and we'll be done. I suspicion, I don't know. Look at that fast. I guess that's part of the reason, right? No, we're trying to get the proactive thing on the solar property tax issue, and it got on. Set on one bill on Tuesday, and it got stripped off.
Yeah.
So I don't know, let's ever come back.
We wrote a Mexico.
Oh, sorry.
Would you do like a?
I figured we're gonna take a picture today. I might as well.
Commissioner Coleman is here, so we're waiting. All right. It is 12 p.m. and all the commissioners are present, so we'll begin the agenda meeting for today, Thursday, May 9th. I would ask those who are participating on the call to please mute your phone unless you need to speak. Today, we have some new folks with us. First, most importantly, our new Commissioner Mitchell. So welcome to the commission.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, absolutely. Welcome.
And we also have a new team member in Jim's division, Jim.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. This is our new economist in our Energy Resources Department. Her name is Obianaju Ezinwana. We call her Obi, not because of the great Cardinal third baseman Ken Obergefell, but because of her, nobody can pronounce her name properly in this country. So, but she comes to us from Nigeria, went to school in Illinois, and we are very pleased to have her with us. So.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah, welcome.
Welcome.
Great. Today, there are 3 tariffs and new orders, 1 case discussion, and 1 other item, which is a presentation from Renew Missouri and NREL. But first, we need to approve the minutes from the May 2nd, 2024 agenda. Those minutes have been provided in advance. Commissioners, are there any changes or modifications to those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting those minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? By a vote of 5-0, those minutes are approved. In tariffs and new orders, the first tariff and new order today is in file number ER-2021-0312, and the matter of the request of Empire District Electric Company, DBA Liberty, for authority to file tariffs increasing rates for electric service provided to customers in its Missouri service area. On July 28th of last year, Liberty filed notice of submission of its Market Price Protection Mechanism, or MPPM, data pursuant to an agreement which was approved as a partial resolution of the underlying rate case in this docket. The MPPM is a risk-sharing mechanism designed to share the risk associated with Liberty's wind projects between shareholders and ratepayers. On November 13th of last year, OPC filed a response to Liberty's MPPM filing. OPC disagreed with the purchase power agreement or PPA replacement values contained in Liberty's MPPM submission. However, for the commission to clarify the PPA replacement values and other issues related to Liberty's MPPM that were resolved in the agreement, the commission would have to interpret that agreement. On March 25th of this year, Liberty filed a notice of an intended case filing, opening file ER-2024-0261. Liberty's notice states that it intends to file a general rate case within months. Therefore, the order before us directs the signatories to the agreement to address the appropriate PPA replacement values as a separate issue apart from any other issue in Liberty's next general rate case. The order also directs the data center to file a copy of this order in that file to ensure that the issue is not left unresolved. With that, I recommend we approve the order, version number 1. Commissioner Coleman.
I support the order.
Commissioner Holzman.
I'm in support of the order.
Commissioner Kolkmeyer.
I support the order.
Commissioner Mitchell.
I abstain.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving this order, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstaining?
Aye.
By a vote of 4-0, that order is approved with 1 abstention. Second tariff in order today is in file number WR-2024-0104 in the matter of the request of Liberty Utilities, LLC, DBA Liberty, for authority to implement a general rate increase for water and wastewater service provided in its Missouri service areas. On April 24th of this year, staff filed a jointly proposed procedural schedule on behalf of all parties. The commission has reviewed the jointly proposed schedule and will adopt it with some modifications, including setting a procedural conference to discuss the post-hearing briefing schedule and noting that the local public hearings will be set in a subsequent order. Therefore, the order before us today sets the procedural schedule as discussed. With that, I recommend we approve the order version number 1. Commissioner Coleman,
I support the order.
Commissioner Holzman,
I'm in support of the order.
Commissioner Kolkmeyer,
Also in support.
Commissioner Mitchell.
I abstain.
All those in favor of approving this order, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstaining?
Aye.
By a vote of 4-0 and 1 abstention, that order is approved. Third tariff in order today is in file number EO-2024-0244 in the matter of the application of Brett Felber for a change of electric supplier. On March 11th of this year, Mr. Felber filed an application requesting a change of electric supplier from Ameren, Missouri to Evergy, Missouri West. Ameren, Missouri and staff both filed motions to dismiss and stated that Ameren, Missouri has a CCN to serve the area of Mr. Felber's residence and that Evergy, Missouri West cannot provide service outside of its certificated area. Therefore, the order before us today dismisses this application for failure to state a claim on which relief may be granted. With that, I recommend we approve the order version number 1. Commissioner Coleman,
I support the order.
Commissioner
I
Holzman,
support the order.
Commissioner Kolkmeyer,
And I do as well.
Commissioner Mitchell.
I abstain.
All those in favor of approving this order, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstaining?
Aye.
By a vote of 4-0 and 1 abstention, that order is approved. The next item on the agenda today is a case discussion and file number EC-2024-0015, Allegri et al. Versus Evergy, Missouri West. This case involves several complaints filed against Evergy, Missouri West. Judge Sire, would you please come to the table and explain the updates in the case?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Welcome, Commissioner Mitchell,
Thank you.
on behalf of the judges. This case involves 38 complainants, all with similar complaints against Evergy, Missouri West. It was scheduled for hearing for next week, 14th through the 16th. However, late last week, the Allegris, Mr. and Mrs. Allegri, filed a motion and asked that the hearing be rescheduled. I gave the parties the opportunity to respond to that motion, and none of the parties opposed that rescheduling of the evidentiary hearing, or at least they don't oppose canceling the evidentiary hearing schedule for next week. So I issued an order earlier this morning that does cancel that evidentiary hearing, but does leave open the possibility that if appropriate, it will be rescheduled. So.
And the change was because will you explain the change?
The change is because Evergy had separate circuit court cases that Evergy stated that they have dismissed that have kind of an indirect bearing on the commission's case. And so in order to, the parties are somewhat in disagreement as to whether it would be productive to have an evidentiary hearing next week, given that.
So, thank you, Judge. So they're not asking to drop the complaint, they're just asked to postpone or not dismiss the
Correct.
hearing at this time.
Correct. The Allegris are not asking for their complaints to be dropped.
Okay. Thank you.
Further questions for the judge? Seeing none. Thank you, Judge Sire.
Thank you, Judge.
Before we go into the presentation, I'm going to go through scheduling so that once we have the presentation, we can adjourn without additional business. So with that scheduling, today we have former Commissioner Roop's farewell reception at 1:30 in the 4th floor ballroom. Next week, Monday, May 13th, there's a discovery conference in case GR-2024-0106 in the matter of Liberty Utilities Mid-States Natural Gas Corp. To implement a general rate increase for natural gas service in room 305 at 10 a.m. with Judge Hatcher. As we just mentioned, the hearing scheduled next week was just canceled. We will have agenda next Wednesday at 12 noon. The following Tuesday, May 21st, there's an evidentiary hearing in case EC-2024-0111, Aquila, Canada and Clark versus Ameren, Missouri, WebEx only at 9 a.m. Wednesday, May 22nd through Thursday, May 23rd, there's an evidentiary hearing in case EO-2023-0276 and 0277. In the matter of the 5th prudence review of cost subject to commission approved fuel adjustment clause of Evergy Metro, room 310 at 9 a.m. with Judge Pridgeon. Wednesday, May 22nd, we'll have agenda at 12 noon to accommodate the hearing that week. The following week, Wednesday, May 29th through Thursday, May 30th, there's an evidentiary hearing in case EO-2023-0407 and 0408 in the matter of the 2nd prudence review of MIA Cycle 3 Energy Efficiency Programs of Evergy Metro in room 310 at 10 a.m. with Judge Hatcher. And then Thursday, May 30th, there's agenda at 12 noon, which was moved due to the Memorial Day holiday. Commissioners, are there any changes or modifications to the schedule? Seeing none at the time. Before we go into the presentations, are any other thoughts of commissioners? Okay, with that, I would like to invite Renew Missouri and NREL to the table, talking about the role of transmission.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Yeah.
Afternoon, my name is Andrew Linares with Renew Missouri, Regional Director for our St. Louis office. And we have Mr. Paul Denholm here from National Renewable Energy Laboratories. Paul is an electric engineer and an expert in transmission issues, and he's going to be giving you a short presentation and taking some questions on transmission issues in general. And Paul, I'll let you introduce yourself and jump in. And can I confirm about 15 minutes, or is there any guidance there in terms of timeline?
That's good.
That's good.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you this afternoon. And yes, I'll be talking about specifically the role of transmission in ensuring a least cost reliable electric power system in Missouri. So just really briefly, a background on. Oh. Let's see, it's not working. Is there
Anywhere you should be pointing this?
Nope.
You're not the only one. It happened to our last presenters as well.
Great, thank you. Nope.
Silly.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
It's me doing it.
Oh.
Looks like I can get it now.
Oh, okay.
Great, thank you. I work at the National Renewable Energy Lab. We're part of the U.S. Department of Energy's National Lab System that focus on a variety of technologies in the national interest. NREL's particular mission is to improve the state of renewable energy technologies with a focus on increasing affordability, reliability, and resilience of the nation's power grid. So what I'm here to talk about is the role of transmission, and with a particular focus on Missouri. But I thought I would start with just talk about the kind of the general trends in renewables we're seeing nationally to kind of put things in perspective. But I'll be brief on that because I know we want to focus on Missouri specific issues. But in general, what we're seeing is the continued decline in cost and increased performance in wind, solar, and storage technologies. these are examples of the power purchase agreements that have been signed over the past decade or so for wind and solar through various parts of the US. Now, I'll emphasize later on the region of the US we're talking about here, of course, being SPP and MISO. But again, we're seeing this general decline in the cost of these technologies to the point where they're being cost competitive in most of the US versus fossil fuels for both new resources as well as replacing or supplementing the output from the existing fossil resources. So given the decline is in cost, we're seeing a dramatic uptake and deployment of these technologies throughout the country. So I want to talk just really briefly about what NREL does in kind of the national interest to understand the potential role of these technologies. What we do in the group that I work with is we simulate the US power grid over the next several decades to understand what would the potential uptake of these resources be, how might they improve reliability and resilience of the grid under different scenarios. We all hear things about data center, load growth. So a big part of this is understanding, okay, what is the impact of that? What is the impact of the mix of technologies that might be needed to meet this increasing load, again, while maintaining critical reliability? So we run a variety of models. They're really not critically important to go into detail, but one of the things that we try and do is we look at a variety of scenarios, load growth, different technology projection, technology pathways, and things of that sort. So really briefly in terms of the national growth, we see the majority of new generation technologies being met in wind and solar over the coming decades because of their increasing cost competitiveness. So the charts here, the chart on the left shows the energy contribution, national energy contribution of wind and solar and other technologies in kind of our base case scenario, whereas the right chart is the total installed capacity of these different technologies. And you can see the significant growth in wind in blue, solar in the kind of yellow and orange colors, and then energy storage in kind of that pink color. So again, basically all of the growth in the electric sector being provided by wind and solar being lower cost than even running existing fossil fuel plants, they're displacing the energy generated from those resources. So this is kind of our current policy mid-case, just giving you kind of a national perspective of where we think the growth in the electric sector will occur and the evolution of the electric sector. So I'm going to skip these and just to indicate that tapping into the nation's best wind resources, and the US is really blessed by some of the best wind and solar resources on the planet. Our solar resources are really only exceeded by a few places like Chile in the Middle East. Our wind resources are also, again, some of the best on the planet. But getting access to these highest quality wind resources, in particular wind resources, does take new transmission. There just isn't a sufficient amount of transmission in the windiest parts of the US to really take advantage of those resources. And again, that's what I'm largely here to talk about, is the role and really the need for new transmission to gain access to these wind resources. So to transition to the role of renewables and transmission in Missouri, there's a number of challenges that you're all aware of. One is the increase in load. So the right-hand chart is the projected growth in load based on our kind of forecasts that we develop in conjunction using data from the US Department of Energy. Again, the actual amount might not matter. It's just the fact that we do project significant growth through to whether it's data centers, normal industrial growth, electric vehicles, population growth, all of those factors increasing load in the coming decades, while at the same time facing the retirement of some of the existing baseload coal resources that exist in the state. Regardless of potential accelerated retirements due to federal regulation, the simple fact is that we've got a significant amount of capacity here in Missouri that is just simply old and will be retired just because power plants wear out. And so we've got some scheduled retirements of some of these plants. But again, you can see that there's a significant number of these coal plants that are over 50 years old. And typically that's about when you start kind of looking at retiring these plants. So the combination of the additional need for new generation capacity and energy, as well as retiring the existing units, does require a new set of resources that can replace and increase their generation capacity. So one thing that we see in a lot of the country is replacing existing coal units, given the high cost of constructing new coal units with new gas units. And these can be very cost effective. One of the challenges, of course, with natural gas is the exposure to price volatility. These are the city gate prices. So these aren't actually the prices paid by electric utilities, but they can be kind of used as a proxy for that. And one part of this is to show that the significant both seasonal price variability as well as long-term uncertainty in prices that can occur over time. And so you cannot sign a 20-year power purchase agreement for natural gas. You just can't go out on the market and find somebody that's going to be willing to sell you kind of natural gas at some known fixed price over the coming decades. But what you can do is sign a fixed power purchase agreement for wind and solar. And most power purchase agreements are for 20 plus years. And so that means for the portion of your electric demand served by wind and solar, that price is known and guaranteed over the coming decades. And you don't have this kind of volatility. So now again, US does have fairly low natural gas prices compared to the rest of the world, but we do see this significant variability. And you have kind of geopolitical events like that spike that happened after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And so all consumers in the state of Missouri, if you increase natural gas use, would be exposed to this price volatility. Again, you can minimize that price volatility by signing long-term power purchase agreements with wind and solar. So zooming in on the opportunities for wind in places like Missouri, we see again, now we're looking at the power purchase agreements that have been signed in the recent decade or so, just in the MISO and SPP areas. And you can see that a lot of the recent contracts that were signed in 2021, at least, this is kind of normalized to $2022, around that $20 per megawatt hour or 2 cents per kilowatt hour cost. And that is below the cost of just running natural gas plants. So essentially what you have the opportunity here is if you build gas plants, you can offset the variable cost or fuel cost associated with those plants. You can get the capacity benefits of the new plants, but you want to, quite frankly, run them as little as possible. You want to supplement their energy with lower cost resources such as wind and solar. And so in this case, you're seeing costs of wind and solar that are below the variable cost of operating gas plants. Now, this data is before the price spikes that we saw kind of in the post-COVID supply chain issues. We did see a spike. So some of the prices that we saw in kind of the 23 type timeframe are a little bit higher than this. The recent Q1 2024 numbers I saw for solar looks like we're back on the downward trend, and wind is at least stabilized. So hopefully all of the kind of post-COVID related issues are largely being resolved, and we can kind of continue on this kind of flat or downward trend to these low stable prices. So that gets us into the role of transmission, and there's really kind of three aspects of transmission that are important to understand when we talk about deployment of wind. One is just simply the need to deploy transmission kind of at the interconnection level, where you tie that new wind plant into the existing grid. So there's need for new local transmission there. There's also the opportunity to gain access to even lower cost wind resources. So long distance wind resources in Kansas are cheaper than those in Missouri. So if you build new transmission kind of in Missouri into Kansas, you can get cheaper electricity. And there's also the opportunity of transmission as an export mechanism. So just in the same way you develop new roads to export agricultural products, you can build new transmission as an export highway to ship Missouri or Kansas wind into Chicago and other regions, and potentially reduce the cost of electricity in Missouri by essentially exporting those products and having some other people pay for it. And again, the same way that when you export agricultural products. So those are really the kind of the three roles that we talk about when we talk about building new transmission. And when we talk about the need for new transmission, we already see problems in the existing grid and the limited amount of transition. So this is an example from a map of prices in the SPP or Southwest Power Pool area, where that kind of purplish blob in Kansas represents wind that was available from existing wind farms. This isn't new, but these are existing wind farms that are unable to get their product onto the marketplace. So if there was demand in Missouri, and there certainly was demand for Missouri during these hours, they were unable to tap into this low cost resource during those hours because of the lack of transmission. Next slide, I'll show this a little bit better, but essentially what you can see in the upper right-hand corner is all of those red lines are transmission lines, and you can basically see how they basically stop at the Kansas-Missouri border. Only two of those red lines, those are kind of I wouldn't even call them super highways, but kind of medium-sized transmission highways running into Missouri. There's just simply not enough transmission from Kansas into Missouri to take advantage of even the existing wind farms, let alone building new ones. And this is another slightly blurry map, but essentially those two red lines are those again, these are the highest voltage, most capacity transmission lines, but there's kind of the somewhat big ones. You can see that there's only two of them. All of those greenish lines, those are the ones that kind of spread power around within the state. Again, we don't have the super highways running across states to tap into these high quality resources. So this really gets into the question of, okay, there is good quality wind in Missouri. The darker the blue color, the better the wind resource. And so you can see as you kind of go from east to west, you just get to better and better wind resources. So there are literally thousands of megawatts of untapped wind potential, way more than you need to provide all of Missouri and all of Chicago and other regions with high quality wind resources. And so this really gets into the question of, okay, what might the least cost mix of wind resources? How much might be in Missouri? How much might be in Kansas? What are the opportunities there? So in terms of the capacity factor or kind of the average generation rate from the existing wind fleet in Missouri, it's about 32%. So if you build a 100 megawatt wind plant in the state of Missouri, in western Missouri, it would on average produce about 32 megawatts, whereas in that same wind plant put in Kansas would instead produce about 41 megawatts, or about a 41% capacity factor. And these are existing plants, including some older ones with kind of previous generations of technology. And so from a perspective of land use, one thing to think about is you've got if you put 5 wind turbines in Missouri, instead of 5 turbines, you only need to build 4 in the state of Kansas. And that's why it's so much cheaper there, because you build less physical hardware to get the same amount of energy.
One more minute, ask
Yeah.
my question.
So that's why there's this potential opportunity to take advantage of Kansas. And when we look at kind of the next generation of wind turbines, next generation of turbines available from companies like General Electric, you can hit easily 50% capacity factors in these places in western Kansas. So there's just this significant opportunity. And so just my final 2 slides show an example of the potential cost savings from something like this. Again, I will not be talking about specific transmission projects relevant to active proposals. This is a somewhat hypothetical example that looks at although it looks at a specific path, it is not one of the specific paths being proposed by any of the major MISO or other developers. And it basically looked at what happens if you build wind in Kansas and with a dedicated line that goes to St. Louis and farther east. What are the potential opportunities? So we did a study where we looked at the potential energy cost savings of developing this line with this wind resource compared to the kind of the do nothing option. And this particular example, the energy cost savings over the life of this project was about $600 million. And so with a very large benefit to cost ratio, again, showing the significant benefits of building a large transmission line, tapping into this great quality resource. There was a slight improvement in reliability, but the key benefits of this particular combination isn't really to improve reliability. It can do a small amount. It's really around energy savings. So that's the primary benefit of this resource. So that's my presentation in a nutshell. I mean, we see that the opportunities for wind and solar in Missouri is significant. We think that would be part of the least cost reliable build out. But again, significant transmission would be needed to make this happen. So that I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Holzman?
Thank you. Appreciate the information and you taking time to join us today. I'm sure every state in the union has considerations for and challenges surrounding property rights. Here in Missouri, it's especially pronounced. What is the thought process for taking existing lines and increasing the capacity of transmission where they already exist?
So technically, I love that idea because I think that there's opportunities to use existing right-of-ways. There's a number of technology approaches. You can increase the voltage of existing lines. You can improve the conductoring, so something called reconductoring, either adding more physical wires along those lines or increasing the capacity of those individual lines. There are some challenges to that. Oftentimes, existing lines will be on a specific right-of-way where that you cannot expand the width of that right-of-way, so there's only so much you can do. It really has to be evaluated on a case-by-case. That's certainly one of the challenges of transmission as opposed to other technologies where you can kind of do a cookie cutter and you can kind of mass produce them. Every single line has to be studied, every single along the entire pathway. So yes, up increasing voltage, reconductoring. There's a number of things that you can do, but they always have to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis.
What about future technologies? I've read scientific articles that have talked about breakthroughs in concrete that conducts power, and you could essentially build a highway that could move energy or charge electric vehicles in place. What are your thoughts on the next generation of technology that might be available to us, and how long before we can see something like that be deployed?
So we at NREL tend to take actually a fairly conservative approach on technologies. Part of it is, sometimes we attract a little bit of flack based on our name, but the simple fact is that we want to understand the deployment of technologies that are kind of either readily available in the marketplace or soon to be available. And so there are a number of technologies that could substantially improve the capacity on existing lines. One example would be when you look at a power line, it's the wire itself is actually made of aluminum. And aluminum is a fairly soft material. So what you have is something called a steel core. And so the strength of the line is limited by that steel core, and how much capacity you can carry on that is based on how much the line will stretch when it gets hot, when it's using a lot of electricity. Well, there are technologies such as composite cores, so like carbon fiber that's a lot stronger than steel, so it can hold more aluminum conductors. So those are kind of the more near-term technologies. I mean, what you're describing is kind of maybe 2 generations of technologies away, so probably not in the next 5 or 10 years. So we like to focus on the technologies that are what can be deployed now. So these advanced conductors. There's also a number of technologies that allow you to control the flow of electricity on lines. So one of my favorites is something as simple as dynamic line ratings. So we basically design our transmission lines kind of like we design the speed limits on highways. I drove here, the speed limit was 70 miles per hour, right? Well, if you've got a situation where it may be dangerous to drive at 70 miles per hour, right? You hope that most people, when it's snowing or raining, drive slower than that. Likewise, I mean, I don't want to drive that much faster than 70, but it could be safer to drive faster than 70 miles an hour. Well, our transmission lines are designed around how much electricity can we put this on the worst conditions. In this case, it would be like putting the speed limit on a highway so that it's always raining and snowing at night, right? So if you said, okay, I want to make the highway speed limit the worst case conditions, I'm probably going to make the speed limit like 40 miles per hour. Obviously, when it's sunny and bright out, you can go faster. Our transmission line can be monitored such that when conditions allow it, we can actually increase the capacity on transmission lines. That's something called dynamic line ratings. So there's a bunch of things like that we can do to better utilize both the existing transmission as well as the new transmission. There's a number of other technologies but I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Other questions from commissioners? Seeing none. Thank you all so much for coming. Really appreciate having you.
Thank you.
you
And
all.
please, if anybody would like Mr. Denholm's presentation, you can reach out to, or his contact information, you can reach out to Missouri.
Great.
Thank you.
that.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. And no
Appreciate it.
further business coming before the commission. We're adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.